Hi there, and welcome to our podcast. And this week at London Visited, we go to the Inn Courts of London to tell you all about this iconic part of London. My name is Steve, and each week I'll bring to you the facts, history and information about different parts of this great capital. If you've been to London, are planning on visiting, live here, or just love London from afar, then this is definitely the podcast for you. Don't forget to visit our YouTube channel, London Visited, to see videos covering this place and so many others across London. And now to this week's podcast. The Inn Courts of London are the professional associations for barristers in England and Wales. There are 4 Inns of Court: Gray's Inn, Lincoln's Inn, Inner Temple and Middle Temple. All barristers must belong to one of them. They have supervisory and disciplinary functions over their members. The inns also provide libraries, dining facilities and professional accommodation. Each also has a church or chapel attached to it and is a self-contained precinct where barristers traditionally train and practice. Although growth in the legal profession, together with the desire to practice from more modern accommodations and buildings with lower rents, caused many barristers' chambers to move outside the precincts of the Inns of Court in the late 20th century. During the 12th and the early 13th centuries, the law was taught in the City of London, primarily by the clergy. But a papal bull in 1218 prohibited the clergy from practising in the secular courts, where the English common law system operated, as opposed to the Roman civil law, favoured by the Church. As a result, law began to be practised and taught by laymen instead of by clerics. To protect their schools from competition, first Henry II and later Henry III issued proclamations prohibiting the teaching of the civil law within the City of London. The common law lawyers worked in guilds of law, modelled on trade guilds, which in time became the Inns of Court. In the earliest centuries of their existence, beginning with the 14th century, the inns were any of the sizable number of buildings or precincts where lawyers traditionally lodged, trained and carried on their profession. Over the centuries, the 4 Inns of Court became where barristers were trained, while the more numerous Inns of Chancery, which were affiliated to the Inns of Court, were responsible for the training of solicitors. The 4 Inns of Court are the Honourable Society of Lincoln's Inn, the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple, the Honourable Society of the Middle Temple, the Honourable Society of Gray's Inn. There have been lawyers in the Temple since 1320. In 1337, the premises were divided into Inner Temple, where the lawyers resided, and Middle Temple, which was also occupied by lawyers by 1346. Lincoln's Inn, the largest, is able to trace its official records to 1422. The records of Gray's Inn began in 1569, but teaching is thought to have begun there in the late 14th century. In 1620, it was decided at a meeting of senior judges that all 4 inns would be equal in order of precedence. In the 16th century and earlier, students or apprentices learned their craft primarily by attending the court and sharing both accommodations and education during the legal terms. Prior to the English Civil War in 1642, this training lasted at least 7 years. Subsequently, the inns focused their residency requirements on dining together in the company of experienced barristers, to enable learning through contact and networking with experts. In the mid-18th century, the common law was first recognised as a subject for study in universities, and by 1872, bar examinations became compulsory for entry into the profession of law. Since at least 1584, members of the Inn Courts have rallied to the defence of the realm during times of crisis. That tradition continues to this very day, in that 10 stone buildings in Lincoln's Inn has been the permanent home of the Inns of Court and City Yeomanry, since the building was freed up by the abolition of the Clerks of Chancery in 1842. Each of the 4 Inns of Court has 3 ordinary grades of memberships: students, barristers and masters of the bench, or benchers. The benchers constitute the governing body for each inn and appoint new members from among existing barrister members. As a rule, any barrister member of an inn is eligible for appointment. In practice, appointments are made of senior members of the bar, usually QCs or High Court judges who carry out work on behalf of the inn, be it on committees or through the training of students and other junior members. The senior bencher of each inn is the treasurer, a position which is held for 1 year only. Each inn usually also has at least 1 royal bencher. They may also appoint honorary benchers from academics, the world of politics and overseas judiciary. The Inns of Court no longer provide all the education and training needed by prospective barristers, who must pass the Bar Professional Training course. but do provide supplementary education during the bar school year, pupillage and the early years of practice. All prospective bar school students must be a member of one of the 4 Inns and must attend 10, formerly 12, qualifying sessions before being eligible to qualify as a barrister. Qualifying sessions traditionally comprise formal dinners followed by law-related talks, but increasingly the Inns offer training weekends that may count for several sessions worth of attendance. The Inns still retain the sole right to call qualified students to the bar, which is associated with the graduation ceremony, call day. Prospective students may choose which Inn to apply to for membership, but can only apply to one Inn for scholarships. It makes no long-term difference which Inn a barrister joins. An applicant might, for example, choose a particular Inn because he or she knows somebody already a member, or it has a student association at their university. The Inn's disciplinary functions are carried out by a joint council of the Inns of Court, which administers the disciplinary tribunals. Barristers are prosecuted by the Bar Standards Board. The 4 Inns are located near one another in central London, near the western boundary of the City of London. Nearby are the Royal Courts of Justice, which were moved for convenience from Westminster Hall to the Legal Quarter of London in 1882. Middle Temple and Inner Temple are liberties of the City of London, which means they are within the historic boundaries of the city but are not subject to its jurisdiction. They operate as their own local authorities. These 2 Inns neighbour each other and occupy the core of the Temple area. The closest tube station is Temple. Gray's Inn and Lincoln's Inn are in the London Borough of Camden, formerly in the Borough of Holborn, near the boundary with the City of London. They do not have the status of a local authority. The nearest tube station here is Chancery Lane. Each inn is a substantial complex with a great hall, chapel, libraries, sets of chambers for many hundreds of barristers, and gardens, and covers several acres. The layout is similar to that of an Oxbridge college. The chambers were originally used as residences as well as business premises by many of the barristers, but today they serve as offices with only a small number of apartments. Another important inn, Sergeant's Inn, was dissolved in 1877, and its assets were, controversially, distributed amongst the existing members. The membership of the inn had consisted of a small class of senior barristers called sergeants at law, who were selected from the members of the other 4 inns and had exclusive rights to an audience in certain courts. Their preeminence was affected by a new rank of Queen's Counsel, which was granted to barristers who were not sergeants. The sergeants' privileges were withdrawn by the government in the 19th century. No more sergeants were appointed and eventually died out. The area now known as Sergeant's Inn, one of the 2 sites formerly occupied by the sergeants, the other being Chancery Lane, was purchased by the Inner Temple in 2002. It was formerly the custom for senior judges to join Sergeant's Inn, thereby leaving the inn in which they had practised as barristers. This meant that the masters of the bench of the 4 barristers' Inns of Courts were mostly themselves barristers. Since there is now no Sergeant's Inn, judges remain in the inns which they joined as students and belong to as barristers. This has had the effect of making the majority of the masters of the bench senior judges, either because they became benchers when they were appointed as judges, or because they became judges after being appointed as benchers. There were also Inns of Chancery, including Clement's Inn, Clifford's Inn and Lyon's Inn, Strand Inn and New Inn, Furnival's Inn and Thrave's Inn, and Staple Inn and Barnard's Inn. They were and are only 4 Inns of Court, which have a special and historic status, including, for example, the authority to call members to the bar and therefore confer on them rights and an audience in the High Court. The other inns, none of which continues to function, were not Inns of Court. So I hope you've enjoyed our look at the Inn Courts of London and the legal profession. Whatever podcast service you use to listen to this, please do subscribe to get updates on new shows, and also please leave us some feedback. Please also let me know any places you'd like us to feature in future podcasts, and you can let me know through our website www.londonvisited.co.uk. You can email me directly at londonvisited@gmail.com, or you can contact us on Twitter and Instagram at London Visited, or Facebook on The London Visited. Thanks for listening, and really hope you enjoyed our podcast, and we'll see you soon in the next one. Bye!